Welcome to Tell Me More, the Allsteel podcast where design meets innovation and we explore the limitless potential of workspaces. In this exclusive series, we're peeling back the layers of workplace design. From the psychology of colors to the future of hybrid work, join us as we open doors to conversations with industry leaders, architects, and designers who redefine the modern workplace. This is Tell Me More, brought to you by Allsteel, because when it comes to designing the future, there's always more to discover.
Our podcast, Tell Me More. We are in the middle of an ongoing series on sustainability. I'm Andrea Gauss, Director of Client Solutions at Allsteel, and today we're going to talk about our better portfolio. And we've talked a little bit about our 3 C's in terms of chemistry and climate and circularity. And now we're going to turn the conversation inward a little bit and talk a little bit more about what Allsteel specifically is doing. But today I have with me 2 great guests, Chad and Brian. Chad, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
I'm Chad Johnson, product marketing manager for H&I Workplace Furnishings, and been with the company over 20 years. I'm in charge of sustainability among a few other roles.
All right, thanks, Chad. And how about you, Brian?
Yeah, I'm Brian Kaule. I'm Director of Product Design for H&I. I've been with the company for 2 years now, and in charge of product design.
All right. So when we think about what we're doing with our portfolio is the most direct way in which we can really have impacts. Obviously, because we're manufacturing things, we're actually taking raw materials, transforming them into something usable. And so we're after this, we're on a journey, we're on a process a little bit. So Chad, you want to help us think a little bit through or share with us a little bit about what we've been going through from a process and a designing for the environment over the last couple of years?
Sure. I mean, designing for the environment is really important, and it's something that's always been probably part of H&I's background and structure, but we haven't necessarily always had a real formal process about what that looked like and how we integrated it into our teams. So over the last few years, as part of our product development process, we've actually integrated into that a series of what I'd say checkpoints are around sustainability. And we've continued to refine that. And it's going to be, and I think we've always talked about sustainability being an ongoing process and journey. I think our DFE will always be this journey kind of moving forward in terms of how do we establish what we're designing for. And we've really structured our design for the environment recently around the 3 C's. So it's intriguing that we think about the chemistry, we think about the climate, we think about circularity, and we're building that into our design for the environment process, which really starts at the beginning of product inception. Because by the time we get to the end, if we haven't made those decisions and looked at it and made holistic choices, we're probably never going to be able to go back and integrate them into a product after the fact. So DFE really drives the product design team, the product development team, as well as the engineering team to be making meaningful choices that relate to each one of those buckets in ways that achieve both regulatory demands, which is on one side, you've got H&I goals and achievements on another, and then market influences kind of as that third point, and brings them all together in a way for them to understand the decisions that they make and have the impacts on the products that they're producing.
I love this notion, and we've talked about it on a couple of our other episodes, that you have to begin with the end in mind. You have to have your goals really, really clearly defined at the beginning of the process and then kind of rally the troops around that. Brian, how have you seen our conversations kind of adjust on this journey as we talk with our design partners, when we start thinking about our supply chain, conversations with our engineers internally to kind of align around this as a focus?
Yeah, as you said, with stating the end in mind, I think it helps frame up the possibilities from the beginning. And the earlier you get it into the conversation, specifically on a product, from product design perspective, the earlier you can sort of bring that to life and help generate the information that helps the team rally around those decisions, right? So design plays a huge role in that, especially knowing that it's going to be part of the end product. And it really helps us, like I said, it really helps us use our skills to rally the team around those decisions for DFE.
I know we've entered into a few kind of fun conversations with a couple of folks external to us and kind of having to help them press us along the way. One way in which I love using industrial designers is I love allowing someone to come in, take a look across our organization and press on some buttons and push us into some new thinking, maybe than what we've done in the past, potentially. Can you talk a little bit about some materials that we're working on and kind of at the forefront of thinking how we need to think about the materials before we can even really think through how then they get integrated into a physical product?
Yeah, certainly from a materiality perspective, we're looking for things that replace current products that aren't in that avenue of DFE. From a sheet good perspective, looking for materials that are maybe less cellulose based and more built around sustainable materials like switchgrasses or fast growing hemp. So, you know, and then even in regards to polymer, like how do we use less polymer, integrating other fiber-based materials as fillers to help us use overall less polymer, less petroleum, is just two examples I would say of areas from a material perspective that we're looking at integrating, and it really does I think open up the door from a product design perspective, but also an end visual perspective too, as we're really trying to celebrate these decision making aspects of DFE and how it actually can just not be something that we're hiding, but also something that shows through in the product.
I love that. I think it's really interesting to think through how we get different sources of information and different avenues then we can kind of track down and learn more from. I know a couple of years ago, we actually brought in a recycling company just to understand how do we even think through the end of life of a product and the next life, right, in a circular economy, and what are the constraints around planning that way and thinking through deconstruction at the end, ultimately. Do we have anything in the works around that, around kind of end of product life? How do you disassemble a product? Any thinking there?
I mean, I think we've got some projects in flight, and it's a little bit of where are we at on that journey and continuation, right? So it's beginning at the beginning instead of thinking about at the end. We think about deconstruction. How are we applying different materials together to allow them to be separated into different recycling streams? I think is one of those key aha moments that we've had. So how do we not use adhesives necessarily to apply two different materialities together and thinking about that? We also know, right? So durability, life of product is one of those things that's always a great thing. And I'd say a hallmark kind of an H&I product is we've got a great lifetime, use of that product. But there are high wear parts. So I'd say as we're thinking about design, and this is part of what DFE is spurring the teams to go do, is think about those high wear parts and how can you make them to be easy to remove or take off of that product, easy to replace, like how can I get a replacement for that, easy to reapply, and then at the end of the day, what do I do with that part now that I have it, right? So how are we able to create a stream for that to flow through is just kind of one of those easy, and I'd say easy things to be able to go achieve, but it's quite difficult for us to do, but at the end of the day, easier than bringing the whole product back into a manufacturing location. Probably at some point we'll start addressing those and having better plans in place, but just low-hanging fruit of how do we attack some of those replacement parts and disassembly is some of the things that we can build through and factor through that are in flight right now with products that we're working on.
That's
Yeah,
great.
I would just add to that too. I think the serviceability of all types, the scale of products from value driven all the way up to premium, right? Is the idea of where can we bring the design of serviceability into the product, which obviously couples what Chad was just saying. But it's actually, there's a lot more there when you're considering it from the beginning than you first think, and it takes the whole team, and so bringing it, as you already said, bringing it to the forefront of the impetus of the product is really critical.
I love that we're doing life cycle assessments now across our portfolio. And so I just want to talk briefly. If you hear the three-letter acronym LCA, that refers to life cycle assessment. And Chad, I'm going to have you explain a little bit more about what that is. And then ultimately we take that LCA and we turn into an EPD. And you can share a little bit more about that. But I love that we're thinking even more so about how can we have internal documents to compare across our portfolios and make better decisions. So Chad, if you would walk us through that a little bit.
So yeah, there's the acronym soup of what sustainability really is, right? So you've got your LCA, which drives an EPD. I mean, an LCA is essentially kind of like what are the carbon impacts or the energy inputs that we have on a product really from cradle. So think of it from the time that ore is getting dug out of the ground for steel, for an example, to where it reaches its end of life through a customer and all the places that it touches and all the energy that it consumes within that space. So it's driven by every type of material that's out there and the journey that it takes to get from where it's created through supply chains to us as a manufacturer, through our dealer network, ultimately to a customer, and then customer's end of life. And what does that energy consumption look like and what's the footprint that it leaves? An LCA is really kind of, think of it as the novel. So you've got your multi-paged report that's going to give you all the information and how we've gathered and compiled that information that you'd ever want to have and then some. But the EPD, Environmental Product Declaration, is kind of the condensed version of that. So it's really something that I'd say not every layman could interpret, but I'd say majority of users can look at that and it gives them a quick snapshot of the impacts that product has on it. The great thing that we're doing is obviously building that out for our products. And what it's going to give us is a snapshot of identification of hotspots. So I know the last conversation we were talking about what products are we looking at for, hey, where are we thinking about replacements? This will help us to identify at a material level where our hotspots really are and which ones we want to be able to go attack to make the most impact that we have to reduce our footprint and kind of give us that full eye view of, hey, not only are we able to see where the hotspots are, we can look at changes and decisions that we make along the design process that can have an impact of reducing that to make smarter decisions throughout the entire cycle of that product's life.
So we're working hard to put things in place to really give us a really clear picture of where we're at today and then prioritize how we can make improvements for the future. Right. I do want to give the public service announcement that EPDs are not all created equally and that you should not compare an EPD from one manufacturer to another manufacturer because we're all using different calculations, perspectives. And so it really is a tool that you could use to compare Allsteel product against Allsteel product, but not necessarily against another manufacturer. So someday, hopefully our industry will get there where we will have a shared EPD logic, but we don't yet.
Correct. I mean, yeah, we're going through the process right now of building our own models with our own internal kind of applications and engineers doing it as opposed to even outsourcing it to a third party. So we've got our hand and footprint on that even more. And we're making decisions in terms of recycled content and what databases we're able to pull from to give us the right level of granularity. So exactly right. At some point, it's not even necessarily even comparing apples to oranges. You might be comparing, apples to vegetables at some point, right? So at some point, they can be that different within the decision-making process.
Yep. All right. Anything else you want to say on the topic as it relates to our journey around our portfolio and where we're headed? Any closing thoughts?
I mean, to me, it's exciting times, right? So I think we're starting to get not only the right tools in place that are driving and spurring the business to where it needs to go for all the right reasons, but it's this journey and continuum of that we're going to be positioned to make the right choices long term within the organization. And it's right terms in terms of health and application and sustainability, but it's the right thing to do kind of from a business perspective as well. So I think it's a great time to kind of be engaged in this process and leading the forefront of that journey.
That's great.
Yeah, I would just say, too, on a product design perspective, I mean, I'm really excited, too, because it allows us to really rethink the convention of each use of material, each use of design element, and relative to it being smarter and doing more for us, not only us personally as users, but also for us as an industry as well. So it is really exciting.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Thanks for joining me on our latest episode of Tell Me More. And I hope gave you as our audience a brief lens, a brief picture into all the things we're doing to better our portfolio. Have a great day.
That brings us to the end of another fascinating episode of Tell Me More. We hope you enjoyed our conversation around better portfolio. Stay tuned for the next episode in our sustainability series, where we'll explore our efforts towards better impacts. As we sign off, remember that the conversation doesn't end here. Connect with us on social media at Allsteel and share your thoughts, questions, or even your favorite moments from the podcast. We love hearing from our engaged and curious audience. Until then, thanks for listening.